Ready?
Yeah? Ready?
Yep.
Yeah. This is such a thrill and an honor. Extraordinary. I first want to thank all those at South by Southwest that did so much to put this panel together. I want to thank Juliette Blake in particular for her vision. Yes, and considering this extraordinary convening for us all. I feel this is such a rare gathering. I want to waste no time and want to nearly dispense with the bios, but I do want to salute these three extraordinary friends and artists first, and then ask questions that will allow you to pull back the curtain on their process. We first have on my left Deborah Roberts. Yes. The Austin, Texas-born artist whose focus on collage in particular and her attention to Black children specifically has resulted in some of the most, I would say, inspiring and devastating and expansive views of Black life that we have. Laolu, otherwise known as Laolu NYC often, is extraordinary as well. He is Nigerian-bred and Brooklyn-based multidisciplinary artist with a wide spanning background from music to performing arts, even to human rights law and activism. And we're so thrilled, and I'm deeply honored to be in conversation with him. And last but certainly not least, we have Michael Ray Charles, a contemporary American painter, really an icon, whose work explores historic African-American stereotypes from antebellum South. He said, how is she saying that? She didn't say and who appropriates images oftentimes from pop culture and advertising to look at the underlying racial bias often in contemporary culture. We are deeply honored to be in conversation with him today. Our humble icon. I want to begin with a question that will allow for each of you to speak about aspects of your work that will focus on the remit of this panel to think through how design contributes to how we create narratives in society. First, by thinking about the function and role of history in your work. You each examine histories in different ways, but I want to begin with you, Deborah. There are many histories that you've examined through the tactic of collage. With respect to a few images that we brought for today, can you speak to how you're examining histories and examining also new narratives for Black culture in your work?
Right. When I decided to do children in my work, I wanted to do a four-pronged approach where I talked about art history, American history, Black culture, and pop culture, all those things to lend itself to talk about beauty and identity. And I use history as a arc in order to tell the story of the past and the future.
Hold on one second before we get going. The clicker, yeah. I realize that the audience can't see your images, and I would like to make sure that they do. No, don't. I got it.
Okay. Raisin.
There we are.
So one of the things that I think that my work tends to do is challenges the notion of where Black children are today and how they are being seen under the lens of today's society. While they are trapped in stereotypes of the past, my whole thing is to bring them forward into the future, because the children are our future, as we say. And this piece in particular, Let Them Be Children, is to let them live their life as their peers, be able to laugh and be joyful and all those things.
And where are you finding your source images? This is one question I know many have.
Well, it's always a process of, finding images. I tend to look toward countries in Africa, different types of countries, that I can find that innocence. I look toward Haiti with all the tragedies and things that have happened. The children are so happy. Their face, that is the base of all of this, the innocence, that they're not touched by pop culture in the way that American children are. Not to say that they're not innocent and deserving of our love and protection, as there is a certain type of beauty that exists in those faces, and I tend to, capture those things in my collages and build upon that one face. So it's all over.
Faces, the palette of the face. Look at the extraordinary Laolu's face here. We have an example of you thinking about history in the context of the diaspora and the context of Ori. Can you tell us about how you've arrived at thinking about the face as a palette to tell stories, and the body as well?
I think pretty much like Deborah, it's more just looking deeper into the human psyche, what makes us human. And I'm Yoruba, and Ori in Yoruba would mean your essence, it would mean your head, it would mean your chi, for lack of a better word. And when I tried to do that, how the Ori was born, because it's called Sacred Art of Ori, what's on my face is, it's pretty much, what would it look like if we were to walk around the world like, gods and goddesses from Yoruba mythology. So I take elements and patterns from different parts of Yoruba Orisha, and then I put it on the skin. Now, when you look at my face, you see the patterns, you see the waves, and pretty much it's the skin actually is my canvas. What I do, I use the white to trap the darkness. So the melanin itself is the paint. Yeah.
And how did you arrive at this practice?
It was a journey. It's been one of a lot of trials and error. Also, just watching my grandmother paint herself. Fela Anikulapo-Kuti, one of my favorite musicians, also used to paint himself. And something about that just inspired me as a child is to see the contrast and the beauty of the darkness of the melanin, and how globally I would like to use that skin to talk, to preach, to talk about, to affirm our completeness. Because the more I began to understand, the way the world viewed me as an African or as a black person in this world, I feel like, a lot of authors have said, I feel like our skin, which is just an organ, automatically when we're born, it's like something to be debated upon, something of criticism, something that a lot of people want to question just by virtue of how we exist. And I think the skin is also like the perfect canvas to be able to speak, to affirm completeness, to talk about Orisha, to talk about the patterns, to talk about the strength and the beauty of who we are as a people. Yeah.
Thank you. Beautiful. We're going to continue. And on this topic of history, history is very much your palette and canvas as well. Can you tell us about how you arrived at this orientation to your work, Michael?
I arrived at constructing images based on racial stereotypes by an early inquiry into what was the best possible way to represent both the good and the bad in terms of a Sambo image. And it took me in so many other directions from a historical perspective. Once I started using it, I figured out that I needed to get beneath the surface of the blackface image. And it led me across disciplines. And it's helped me to understand the world quite differently. The representations of blackness associated with tin toys, the construction of American popular culture at its core, with the construction of blackness and, of course, whiteness. These images are prominent, or concepts are prominent, but it's also taken me into antiquity, looking back at 4th century, 6th century depictions of Africans or Ethiopians. And so history is a very important component. There's so much that I've learned that I think we don't know with regards to the construction of blackness. And I owe it all to my interest in history.
Would you mind reading this work for us in the context of history, the work that's on the screen here?
Me?
Would you? Yes, you. It's a rare treat. In terms of the citations of history, in that sense, why the Lincoln, right? Why the Johnson?
Well, this particular image was from my last New York show, and I hadn't shown in the States for some time, and this was an opportunity to do so. I could not have gotten to this particular image had I not gone through the research that I've been doing with regards to representations of blacks within Western culture. So what you see here is a depiction of a male/female with the entertainer's gloves, a halo-like art decorative element, architectural feature on the wall, as well as additional architectural features. The image of Lincoln and LBJ, and they're sort of like the pendulum swinging. So one hits the other. And I think this painting for me is about the framing of blackness between these two positions, emancipation and civil rights. And in light of what's been going on in the world, regressive politics, for example, in addition to a number of other kinds of political maneuvering, we're revisiting the civil rights movement, we're revisiting the Civil War, for example, and there's an interesting space about the development of blackness through these particular periods. I think post-civil rights was and has been a moment of tolerance with respect to law, and as of late, it's been regressive in ways that I think are not beneficial. So for any of us moving forward, so this particular painting is my way of subtly trying to suggest that as a pendulum swinging back and forth, we're looking at the challenges of the frame of, between the framing of emancipation and the civil rights. And there's an androgynous reference to this image, and I should say that paying a lot of attention to minstrelsy and blackface over the years, I could not have come to understand what I see as parallels between the otherness associated with blackness in American culture, and I would say in Western culture, the otherness in the way, if one thinks of our political hierarchical structure here, black maleness is feminized in many ways. So I conflated the two in this particular image.
I want to let the audience in on a little secret here. I didn't interrupt you, did I? No. I didn't interrupt you, did I?
No.
This question about history, I'll get to in a minute, but my esteem for each of these artists could not be higher, but I'm sitting here largely because of Michael Ray Charles. His work, his engagement with history, the objects that you're able to put on display made me see that this is the work I wanted to do with my life. So when I was a college student at Harvard, I saw Spike Lee's film Bamboozled and was looking at these objects of minstrelsy, looking at these objects of history and understanding that there wasn't enough work being done to think about this pendulum swing that you've described, to think about the role of history in shaping our present. And I became an art historian against all odds, despite other things pulling on me. And this is the first time that we've met, actually. So it's a true excitement and sort of an honor for me to have this exchange. I'm also framing this discussion in the context of history because of what I find to be, an important current moment in thinking about why we're here together. Frederick Douglass, W.B. Du Bois, Alain Locke, these are all thinkers, black leaders, who knew that truth couldn't be accessed without culture, without the arts. But that's a discovery we've only arrived at recently. This is archival work, research that's happened only recently to fully understand the extent of their belief in the work that you're doing now. Frederick Douglass, to speak to this, I'm not going to speak long, this is about them, but just for context, Frederick Douglass speaks about, during the Civil War, the importance of pictures for America's notion of itself, to expand its sense of possibility, and to push back against the denigrating stereotypes of African Americans. And he states in this speech that it would take over 150 years for someone to come along and better explain or demonstrate what he means about the importance of pictures. And I know that it's an artist like Michael Ray Charles or Laolu NYC and Deborah Roberts who he had in mind. Deborah Roberts, Laolu, Michael, they're all speaking to the importance of these counter-narratives, right, that we need to see more and more in society. So I want to think about what's at the core of their argument, which is about how we access the truth. So I've asked you about history, and I can advance here to others in the deck. But how we access the truth. Now, can we go back through a round of questions? And I'm going to ask for the tech help to go back to Deborah Roberts' images here. Yeah. And think about what it is. Imagine yourself 50 years from now. What do you want people to understand about the truth of what you're stating about Black life, right, with this work? And I can advance for you if you like.
Wow, I even think we have to go further than 50 years, maybe 100 years.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always talk about, and we were talking earlier, I want this work to be an archive or artifact of a time that no longer exists, that people can understand, see people not as this monolithic idea, but this one whole person.
Yes.
And be in awe of the fact that we even lived this way, that we thought there was an issue between black, white, brown, any other colors, that we were all human beings and worthy of that oneness, So that's what I'm hoping, to get from the work, that people get from the work. We were talking about James Baldwin and how he wrote wonderful, wonderful literature in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and we're still living those things. You would think that we have moved past it. Yeah, we have made some progress, but the way people are identified, the way people are treated, those things are still happening. And this piece in particular that's on the screen right now is of George Stanley Jr.
Yes, tell
When
us
he
more.
was 14 years old in South Carolina, he was accused of killing 2 young white girls. He was 14. He couldn't have done that. He was really thin, small kid, and he was tried and convicted within. He was arrested in 3 days, tried in 10 days, convicted and murdered in 80 days total. And he was the youngest person ever to be killed on death row in this country. In fact, we changed the laws because he was so small. They had to put books, on the electric chair because he kept falling off. He was just too little for that. So almost 90 years later, he was exonerated. There was no way he could possibly have done that crime, but just because his word of "I saw her," I saw them. They drove by, rode by his house, and just that acknowledgement cost him his life. And that's this idea of being quiet. And I always talk about the adultification of black children when they want young children to have the type of history of an adult, and they just don't have that life experience. So that's why my work tends to push that narrative of allowing children to exist under all these stereotypes, under all this past and history, to just live their own life, their own truth. And so, that's why this is so important. In order to sometimes gain power, collage has always been a useful tool for that. And I'm just using it in this way to hopefully, I always tell people, children are the honey, the medicine is when you absorb it. That's the cure. So, I don't know if it's working. I think it's working a little bit.
I think it's working. We know it's working. Thank you. Can you speak to this idea of truth as it relates to the essence that you're honoring with every design, whether it's on the body, the canvas of clothing, the canvas of an actual object? How are you conveying the truth about all of those who you depict with your work?
I think something about, like I said earlier, about the skin and affirming, our completeness and talking about who we are, drawing from Yoruba mythology and Yoruba, spirituality is something that's been very important to me. And I think one of my major inspirations was traveling to the United States. I've been here for about 10 years now, and the first time anybody ever called me black was when I came to the US. And understanding that was something I had to dig deep into to understand. studying works like Deborah or reading about, Martin Luther King, reading more about, just Jim Crow, civil rights movement, and just giving myself a lot of education, understanding, who I was. So it led to a lot of, inspirations to how I would like to represent, the skin and tell stories. So that in itself gave birth to a lot of works that I did, working with other artists, using the skin as canvas, like the one we have on the screen, Danielle Brooks. She's so amazingly talented artist, and just being able to work together with her, what we did was more telling a whole story about completeness as a crown on her face, the lines on her skin, talking about her origins and Ife, and also ancestry. So the spirals also have meanings. It means together we build, together we honor those who have come before. So all those things, hold very important, sway, and then we capture some of them photography. I go over them with acrylic and stuff. So it's a whole process, which is very interesting, and also like I'm just happy to be able to, bring out this beauty, because I think when in a lot of my, work together on projects like this, when the artist or the muse looks at themselves in the mirror, or they see the pictures or they see the work, just the beauty of like, I want to keep this on my face forever. I just feel like my work is complete, So yeah,
Yes.
it's to connect us to, the source.
Beautiful. And Michael. We could speak for a full hour about accessing the truth through stereotypes of Black life.
Well, I just jotted down a few notes. There was literally at one time a pursuit for and of the truth, singular, and I discovered along the way, there's no such thing. There are multiple truths, and they're endorsed by, I don't know what's the word to use here, endless amounts of perception. I'm thinking about Deborah talking about her image with the young kid. I'm familiar with that story. I have one for you. My hometown is the only town in the country, where a person has been electrocuted twice for the same crime.
Oh, no.
Willie Francis. And which is interesting about this place is there is the courthouse where Big Bertha was brought in from Baton Rouge, where the electrocution occurred twice. It is a moment in my hometown where it's a neo-colonialist building, columns and white building. To the left, maybe 2 blocks, is a church-sanctioned Catholic church, and then to the right is another church, Catholic church. It's black, Catholic church, smaller. So I've always experienced this idea of difference in my hometown. I was intrigued by, at the end of the day, when we went to school, my friends, and I could still name them from 5th grade, they got on one bus going one way, and we got on another, going another direction. And it somewhat stained me. And as I grew older, went to school and studied advertising and design, I figured I could make a living as an artist. The next step was advertising. And I couldn't get a job. My storyboards were all depictions of images of blacks. Now, I was a little naive, but that was my default position. And the ideas were good, don't get me wrong. It was just, I guess it was difficult at the time for people just seeing all these images of black people. And I didn't think about it then, but when I got into graduate school, it really hit me. There was, and I still remember a professor saying, there's nothing wrong with this, only this. And I drew a line. I realized that there are a lot of things that society will take away from me, and my art making, my creative practice is just not one of them. So in my pursuits of the truth, I discovered this little figure, the Sambo image, and I remembered it from cartoons, I remembered it from popular culture, and I wanted to dig deeper. And that I've done and continue to do. And I realize, again, that there's no singular truth. And it's really not a team sport. It's really about, well, it's more complicated than how I'm presenting it. Things have happened over time that are suppressed. Ignorance develops. We don't understand. We're not exposed to it, and we're not critical about certain things like the evolution of representations of blackness. So therefore, some claim it and some resist it, and we perpetuate teams, sort of white team, black team, the pluses and minuses, not unlike we do with Republican and Democrat. So my search is ongoing, and my interest within that search is to, I guess I'm writing somewhat of a dissertation. I'm not a writer, that allows me to present the connections that, for whatever reasons, folks have not yet to kind of do so. You know, I'm gonna say this and I'll stop.
No.
Eric Lott, L-O-T-T, writes the book, I think, on blackface minstrelsy. And at the time, both Eric, myself, and Rip Lehman, who was another scholar at the time, wonderful, brilliant guys, are writing about minstrelsy. And it was a joy to be in their midst. And we're all trying to understand the presence of the past, the ongoing presence of the past. And, you know, Rip says Eric wrote the book that he wanted to write. And it's a really wonderful, written book, very dense. But I'm losing my train of thought here out of the level of coffee and nervousness.
No, we're all following, accessing the truth, studying it, focusing on minstrelsy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was fascinating to be in the midst of these guys who were trying to reconcile what was this thing and how does it continue to affect us. And I learned a lot from being around them. And interestingly enough, they were willing to go only a certain distance. Obviously, historians, me being an artist, I could cross disciplines in various ways. I should be talking to you guys. And I've been able to really critically examine anything from representations of early images, big red lips, broad forehead, to terracotta vases and how they manifest themselves in 19th century America, and all of those references are kind of plugged into my work. So, so the truth is ongoing. And it's not an arrival for me. It's I guess it was Einstein who said questions are more important than answers. So for me, it's constantly questioning.
One of the, I'm going to land on this last image here and actually ask each of you to consider how we access the truth through, it's the remit of our panel, symbols and stories. When you mentioned, say, Michael, speaking with other scholars, your contribution to the conversation is also about the repertoire, the symbols that you're using, the stories that you're accessing to address what hasn't been discussed regarding our racial past. And this painting you and I discussed a bit before the panel might give, I think, the audience a good sense of how you're accessing stories and creating symbols out of them in your work. Can you speak just about this painting called Two Toms?
Two Toms, yes. Forever Free, Two Toms.
Yeah.
It was an image that was used that I did a few years back. And I wish I had not sent that painting to the gallery because I wish I kept that one for myself. But nonetheless, some years ago I discovered the importance of what I think Stratfordshire pottery was, trying to understand what were the similarities between 4th and 6th century depictions of Ethiopians, and then what's the connection with 19th century black memorabilia as we know it to be. And Staffordshire pottery, I believe, is an integral part of it. So I signify in my work, their presence references terracotta, the orange hair, the red lips in relationship to, or opposition to, the minstrel mask, which was the white lips, not a deviation, but an extension of clowns. So this particular image is a representation of the two boxers, Tom Cribb and Tom, I can't pronounce the last name, Melanex New, it's a French name, but the black fighter was an enslaved man who fought his way out of enslavement, only to travel to Europe to fight Cribb, who was at the time the heavyweight bare-knuckle champion. And there was the way that the fight went, the Cribb lost the fight, and the fight was stopped, and the black fighter was accused of having had something in his gloves. And then in this bare-knuckle fighting, they fought forever until it was ended. So the fight eventually was won by Cribb, and I just thought it was an interesting storyline for how often the rug is pulled, the finish line is moved or extended, and I say that as a reference to the challenges black people have faced in American culture, let's say the 20th century, redlining and all of that kind of stuff. So this is what that reminds me of, and it's positioned in relationship to an education, a school desk, I should say.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll go in reverse order here, Laolu. Symbols and stories. This is connected to your family genealogy, right? As well as your home. Can you give us a sense of how you arrived at finding, through symbols, a way to tell stories about who we are, and thinking about your family home, thinking about your grandmother?
Grandmother, yeah.
Yeah.
So early on in my life, so I born and raised in Nigeria, I grew up in Ilorin and partly Lagos. I think just my mom exposing me, my grandmother exposing me to a lot of folklore, a lot of, stories about Yoruba, Orisha, and, just, a lot of beautiful things about the culture was a launching pad for me. I didn't even know at the time it was going to be my life, work. Eventually what I was going to do, because, I was supposed to be a lawyer, but, I'm a lawyer, but my dad wanted me to be a lawyer. I became a lawyer, and then I quit my job, That's a whole story there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's kind of formed the bedrock, of how I saw the world. And I saw the world just through the vision of a Yoruba person. How would a Yoruba person interpret this contemporary situation? So that led me to drawing from, tapestry, from Oshogbo stylized art, drawing from Nike Okundai 277, a bunch of stuff by Bruce Onobrakbaya, and a lot of other people, that I've, looked at over the years, and just, draw out some of the symbols, and just to tell the stories that move me or stories that affect me today. Like the one we have here was born during a protest in 2020, George Floyd, which is a very, very, at that point it was nerve-wracking to even be able to, because I was in New York, my family's in Nigeria, and my mom would call me every day crying and say, "Oh, New York is a bed of, death. Don't go out. You're gonna, everybody was scared." And then the protest happened. George Floyd died, and just the mortality, you are like faced with your own blackness, and then you have no one really to bounce off of. You're alone. You're quarantined in your house. So you're faced with a lot of things. I just started drawing and putting out inspiration and just putting things down. And for a lot of Nigerians, we're also going through NSARS protests. So people were talking to me like, oh, you're making art about America. How are you not making art about Nigeria? So, and there's this dichotomy sometimes between just being Nigerian and being Nigerian living in America. For a lot of Nigerians, they're like, so are you American now? And like my pops would say, crack jokes like, oh, he's American, we lost him. But for them, they feel like you're talking to American issues. But I'm like, this is not American issues. This is a world, global issue. Because I tell my dad once, I was like, you know, when I walk around in New York, the police officers don't have cameras and questions like, oh, where are you from? Are you from Africa? What country are you from? No, I'm a black person. And it would be stupid of me, you know, not to be able to represent my struggles because I navigate this system as a black person, period.
Yes.
And that's my life. So I speak on these issues like my life depends on it. So I want to speak. I want to be as loud as possible. Not everybody likes loud words and stuff, but I just want to be able to express myself in ways I feel comfortable and just bring people into the conversation because I believe art is a conversation starter and it can lead to things. I believe our viewpoints are all important, our stories are important, you know? So that's the inspiration.
One of the ways that I come to Laolu's work is through honoring Robert Ferris Thompson, who I'm sure some of you in the room know, and is the extraordinary Africanist who really gave us a sense of how many African traditions were retained, creolized, syncretized in the Americas after slavery in visual form. I was his final student at Yale and bringing up the caboose, this long train of students. So he's, you know, Kelly Jones, Steve Nelson, all the others, incredible scholars are before me. But he made a statement that I just want to share with you. He passed away a few years ago that I'll never forget in a lecture. He said to the students at Yale, until you know how African you are, you will never know how American you are, right? Which you're reflecting on when you're creating this work, speaking back to your family. So can you describe for us how people understand the diaspora anew through responding to the symbolism of your work? This is something we've discussed a bit before.
Yeah. So a lot of times, you know, especially when I go back home to Nigeria and I have, you know, interviews or talk to friends, and a lot of people ask me questions, so what is it like living in the United States or living in New York or living in Brooklyn? And I'm like, it's in the art. You know, it's in my viewpoint. And you know, we have different perceptions about what America is until you get here. There's the illusion of, oh, America, just go chase your dreams. You're going to make it, you know, just going to hit it big. Nobody tells you you're black first. No one. So you land here and then, oh, wow. So you have to grapple with all of that and understanding how you are, who you are, what your goal is, how you want to live. You know, because there's a lot of people who run away from it. I have, you know, relatives who are like, oh, we're not, you know, we're just going to stay in our little. But the truth is, how would I rather live? Would I live or not? No, I decide to make a statement. You know, like Deborah said, you know, some of these things, you know, will be a relic of the past, you know, within 100 years. So as artists, we reflect the times. We talk about things that are happening to us right now. Whether you like it or not, is our reality. So there you go.
And if we could cue up a few of Deborah Roberts' images on the screen here, I'd love to have you reflect on the same question. In your case, there are a range of symbols that you're engaging with, and I wonder what you would choose for this conversation to engage with, to speak to the idea of the truth that you want to convey. And if we can go to the front of the deck, that would be great. Sure, they'll. Great.
Okay, that's not the front, but I don't mind talking about that one.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
keep going. We can keep going.
Keep
but
going. Okay.
I was talking about the little girl that's walking, that has a fist up and has a peace sign.
Yeah, I can get to that.
How you exist in that duality, that right there. Well, she doesn't have. Yeah, she has a peace sign. That is either by the dove, or
Yeah.
that she can. She could be very peaceful. The hand that is out. I think we cannot gain any movement in the world with a closed fist. So a hand is out, you know, free to someone to take it. But she can also do it by the closed fist, by the violence nature of it, while she wants to be peaceful. It's the whole idea of trying to figure out who you are in the world, not just in America, but in the world. And that work, I really was talking, and one face is looking at you, one is looking away from you. Is that if you can't see me, I can't see you. We know how it feels to be present and absent in a space. And that's what this works, you know, to me, talks about. And how it lies in history. You're right, we live in the now. And I'm working through the works of how I am viewed and how children are viewed now, not in the past, but right now.
The size of the hands in your entire body of work are outsized relative to the body.
Right.
Can you speak to us about the importance of that?
Well, it's the power that exists in the work. You have most of the hands are men hands. They are powerful hands that children have to have. You know, I think the Washington Post did a study on black girls, how they are over-sexualized more than their peers.
Yep.
That somehow they are older than they appear to be. So in these works, I put big men hands next to little baby faces. Those two things can't exist at the same time. And so I'm asking you to see the child that exists in this work. So if we move ahead and some of the other pieces, you'll see that same type of, you know, process of creating bigger hands in the work.
Can you also speak to us about the symbolism of the white backdrop?
Okay. I always tell people that the white space is just as important as the image in front. I don't want to do any type of background noise. I want you to focus totally on the image of the child. But we know in the world, blackness is always centered around whiteness, how it's perceived in white spaces. So while the work is moving through white space, it is also this white space is very glaring. It is asking question of this child, asking question of the viewer. It's asking you to see me instead of that child, to see that space and how it moves. And so that's why I decided not to put any background noises in the work, to have that conversation. And as the works moved, especially in 2020, the images got larger. They started to take up that white space. In that piece, Shanika and Grace, how the girls were becoming more right there. They became more heroic. They became closer, bigger, more powerful. You had to look up to them instead of downward. And so that was very important in the work. And just the movement and the closeness of the imagery, how their hair merged, you know, that crown, you know, that exists.
I just want to tease one thing out. When you said that in 2020 the works got larger,
Right.
can you speak to what it was in you that forced the works to become larger? I think we've spoken about this a little before.
I know, and I'm not trying to be funny, and it was our COVID year. I think we were all afraid of other humans. And, you know, when I first started drawing this, I mean, this wasn't the first one I drew, but the second one became even larger. I was like, wait, maybe I've been out of the studio too long. And the third one became larger when I drew it on the canvas. And the fourth one I did, I just purposely drew it smaller because I knew that was the size of the work. But it wasn't the size of the work. This was now the new size. And it was asking for more. It was asking more of the viewer. It was asking more of me to be seen larger, you know, not so protected, not so vulnerable, standing on its own. And so the work has just even bloomed from that. It's even gotten even larger. And I think that's something that, you know, I listen to when the work tells me that. I follow what the work wants me to put out into the world.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a powerful metaphor you put on in the arena for us. What does it mean to respond to the call to be asked to be seen larger?
Right.
For this, I want to go back to Michael and circle back around. because of the move he made, which is very rare, to retreat. COVID forced a retreat on all
Right.
of us. But you might not know, you're really sitting in a kind of rare seat in the audience, because Michael Ray Charles retreated for about 20 years from the art world. In order to do, and this is what I'd like to ask you about, what precisely and how has it let you come back to showing work anew, perhaps in a bolder sense?
Well, it was simple. I was confronted with a lot of assessments of my work that I just didn't agree with, and I'm not saying it was beneath me. I saw resistance from those who were in positions to endorse my work. I keep talking directly to you. And I also saw how some of those folks resisted it. And I would have my work written about, and people would talk about, I'm trying to think back. They would talk about the carpets I had in my house or what car I had in my driveway. They wouldn't talk about the work. There were people that talked about, in fact, a film crew came once, and one of the guys was asking me questions, and he didn't frame my work as a painting, which, I could go into how do I describe my work, but nonetheless, he and the cameraman began to argue, not unlike about whether I was making paintings or drawings, not unlike my time in graduate school when I had two professors come by to give me a studio visit, and it was. I remember one of them. I'm not going to say names, but I remember one of them saying to the other, "What are we doing here? Are we attempting to create? Is it our job to create a better artist or a better black artist?" And as I have now, I always keep my sketchbook, and I remember jotting that down. And to think about the challenge of that, it's just. It continues to inform and guide me in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What does it, being in conversation, I'm mindful of our time and wanting to have our final sort of 10 minutes, be an opportunity for us to engage with each other's work here. What does it mean after the 20-year retreat?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry?
I didn't go into that.
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, my kids were growing. I was teaching, I was sleeping. Whenever I could sleep, I was producing, and we need 10 paintings here, we need 12 paintings in Spain, we need 30 in New York. And, I think you could live your dream or you could live somebody else's. Mm-hmm. And it was important to me to pull back, and I was able to do things that I think the pace that I was on prior would have prevented me from looking more in depth into the types of images that I've been interested in. And I don't think I would have derived that any of the ideas or the perspectives that I have. I traveled. I spent a lot of time abroad, and it just. I think I could have stayed out a little longer because I've always been interested in longevity. And the dialogue I was also a bit naive, I should say. I expected that there was an embracing of truth. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't necessarily the case. But where I'm at now, I'm showing again, and it is what it is. If folks are interested, fine. If not, fine. And I don't get upset when someone refers to me as the wild child from the South when describing my work, because that's a stereotype. And here's my work about the very thing, and this is what a curator or a writer writes about my work. Mm. So I didn't want to play in that arena. Mm-hmm. So.
Can I just interject something?
Please
right
do.
I think people don't understand the pressures of the art world and what they require And when they knocked on your door, as they say, it was just overwhelming with so much. You're right. I mean, your name was on everyone's lips, and everyone wanted to work, and not all the right people wanted to work. And you know what I mean. And so it was this idea of having to produce. That's something that that's happening with me right now. I mean, it's just, you have to stop it. If you don't stop it, then it'll overtake you. And we understand that.
But it wasn't so much that I stopped it. I continued to paint. I still,
I mean,
20 paintings a year.
Right.
But I wasn't, I wanted to smell the roses. I wanted to sit near green spaces and near the ocean's edge and contemplate the infinite edge. And I couldn't do that if I was teaching and then on a flight giving a lecture abroad at a show, and it's just nonstop. And I needed those things to really kind of do the work from the perspective that I wanted to do it. I made a decision early on that I would teach to make a living and live to make the art that I wanted to make. And for me, it's a long, when Martin Luther King said he was interested in longevity, that's what I'm interested in. And the body of work, just like what you mentioned earlier, Deborah, that I hope to produce is not looked upon in one single image, but the totality of what I produce.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm just sort of dropping little nuggets here and there as I go along, and as long as I'm able to stay active, producing, thinking critically, I'm good. So 20 years is not. I've been working.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Deborah, you've mentioned in your interviews, and one of which is with me, that your work only makes sense to you when you have a sense of quiet around you. So I'm interested in how you can cultivate the 20-year experience through tactics. Can you, we don't have much time remaining, but for those who might be artists in the room or those watching, offer a vivid sense of how you maintain that inner life.
It's really hard. I mean, as Michael experienced, and I'm experiencing now, that there's so much energy around the work and around you as an artist. Finding that space to be quiet, that quiet time, has been very hard. This was supposed to be my sabbatical year, and I have not started sabbaticing yet, and I don't know when that's supposed to start. But one of the things that I do know that what Michael says is the work cannot get better. It cannot grow and bloom in the ways that you need it to do if you don't take the time to find that quiet space. I love that notion of sitting at the ocean's edge and contemplating the infinite space out there. I can visualize that.
That's right.
It's far away, but I can visualize it.
Yes. Well, I wanted to close us out. Would you speak to this idea too? But also, I'll ask you a question after that. Okay. Go on. Yeah.
Sorry, what's the question again?
Well, actually, let me ask the question I'd like to use to close us out with our few minutes remaining. The infinite edge, the inner sanctum. I'm thinking about this gorgeous work of art that you have on your canvas of your face. Can you first describe what this is to the audience, and then perhaps offer a word that would describe the other artists?
They could just keep flipping the artwork. There's a bunch of them, so you get a better understanding of it.
Yeah.
So if, for example, my name is Laolu Senbanjo. So Shen is a water deity. It also means abundance. So on my face, you see the water waves. You know, so it's together with the water waves and abundance. So that's a prayer I wanted to move in today, and I put it on my face. Now, again, like I said, the darkness is what makes the art pop. So the melanin itself is the paint. So the use of white is to create like negative space, to be able to draw with the darkness in it. And that's where I find, inspiration is the darkness by using the white itself, as a contrast. It's funny you talked about white space, and I was like, yeah, that's about right. What I was thinking about white is to be able to trap the darkness. it's very important for me to be able to do that because at the end of the day, I just want to tap into some ancestral form of art that's been around for millennia. You know, it's something we've done. But then with the tools we have today, I believe we can go way deeper in terms of the complex designs, you know, just how we're able to create it and tell our stories the way, you know, I've heard it before and I want to bring it into now. Like some of these pieces you see here is very reminiscent of a Yoruba Orisha called Yemaya. We also know her as Yemoja. And this was inspired by my mom. So my birthday, I always try to celebrate my mom because this is the thing we have going is that I didn't really do anything to be born. She did all the work. So we have this symbol called Yeye Omoeja, mother whose children are as many as the fishes of the ocean. That's what Yemoja actually means. And that's why you have the blue tapestry all around it. So this is all part of a series where we talk about the inherent nature and what mothers mean in Yoruba culture and what this pattern means to bloom. And the halo is like homage to, you know, Black Madonna and Child. Just in the gold means Iyanewura. It means mother is like gold, even and more. So it's like in Yoruba. So pretty much that's I try to dig deep and use Yoruba itself as the inspiration behind a lot of these pieces. So yeah.
It feels as if you're describing a way of maintaining that inner state, that inner truth of who you are,
Yeah.
the essence, through the exterior.
Oh
form,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Every day is what I strive for. Is the peace and the knowledge that first I'm not alone. I exist. I'm here. My life matters. My story matters. You know, and you know I want, like they said, I would like my body of art to be remembered by the amount of work I did over like a period of years, not just this one painting, you know? It's just, you know, a catalog of work, and I like my years to be remembered in the work I did. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sitting here knowing and feeling the ancestors, whether it's Frederick Douglass or W.B. Du Bois, Yoruba ancestors, all saluting the fact that we're living in the present and looking at, as Michael Ray Charles says, that infinite edge. So I want to thank you three for the inspiration, for the work, for the fellowship. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you.